Blabbers, welcome to our show today. I am Catherine Shelton. That is Isaac Gonzalez, tech guru and master brain genius. Is that a fair assessment, Isaac?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So
I said that very convincingly.
I know we need more attitude, but we're becoming alchemists today, Isaac. That's what it's all about. It's becoming an alchemist. So lots of attitude, lots of like, yay! Are you feeling the alchemy in your soul?
It's coming in. I think I'm.
Okay, all right. As long as it's coming in.
Osmosis. Yes.
Okay, so I posted a link. I'm going to post it again because I think it's pretty cool. And this is what I've been kind of investigating the last week or two, because I think it's a really interesting framework that I stumbled upon. And okay, so my challenge is to talk about this and make it interesting and practical for you guys, and hopefully give you some interesting content and stuff to think about, but without getting too like academic and nerdy and like, here's part one of an MBA. If you go to Harvard, you will need to study. We don't want to do that. So if I get too nerdy, tell me off or ask questions, and we'll try and keep this sort of positive and practical and helpful. So I'll kind of kick this off and talk about what this is about. So there's a study by these two guys called Rook and Talbot. I think they're British guys, but they wrote this thing for the Harvard Business Review. And it's called The 7 Transformations of Leadership. Sorry, I felt that needed like some eyebrow emphasis.
Yeah, dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. The 7 Transformations of Leadership. How does this relate to people who are entrepreneurs, who are working at home, who are selling online, selling on Amazon? We'll kind of get to that. We'll talk about that. And these guys basically analyzed a bunch of corporations, businesses, organizations. They interviewed people, and it was kind of like an academic BuzzFeed quiz, because they basically decided that people fit into 7 transformations, or their thought process and their actions fit into these 7 transformations. And they actually call it your action logic, which is how you, let me define action logic, how you interpret your surroundings and how you react when your power or safety are challenged. And this is kind of interesting to me, because I feel that a lot of us kind of start out on what they define as the bottom rung of these transformations. And the bottom rung they pretty much identify is opportunist. And this kind of struck a chord with me, because I was talking about my Amazon journey the other day. Laurie Flacker was interviewing me. And I was really thinking about my Amazon journey. She said, how did you get started? What was it all about? And I talked about how I started just selling anything I could find. I started selling things from like Nordstrom Rack, and I was selling on eBay, and it was all about the quick flip. And I was literally, how do I make a quick buck? How do I make money very, very quickly? And that's a question I see coming up a lot in Facebook groups online. Okay, I've got $500. How do I make money very quickly? What's the quickest way I can make money? How do I get a quick flip? What's a fast turnover? And there's a good reason for that. A lot of people do start selling online just like, I need to pay the rent. I need to make money right now. And this is called like, from their point of view, from Rook and Talbot, they talk about the opportunist. And I think a lot of us do start on this journey as opportunists. And that's basically a very reactionary thing. You're like, okay, I'm going out to find treasure. Okay, there's yard sales. Great, that's an opportunity. Boom, I can make money. And I think on a bigger scale, I think the internet marketing boom is kind of an opportunist thing. It's like, okay, here's a quick, fast money, like, make money fast opportunity, grab it and work with it. And that's fine. But I think you're stuck in a mode of reacting. And I think it can be super stressful. I'm looking at you, Isaac. Do you have any comments or thoughts on?
Oh no, this is great. I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm just agreeing. Yeah, and I think you hit it where it's very reactionary, and so you're constantly listening for the market and determining. It's like you're going surfing, and you're just waiting for the next wave to come, and you got to hurry up and get in there before the other guy gets in there before you.
Right, and so what's interesting here is that these guys reckon there are a whole 6 more stages on, like, evolution from being an opportunist. And I think this is kind of interesting. Another thing about sort of the opportunist thing is it's kind of high risk. You're not kind of setting yourself up with a secure foundation. And I think that's the question: is it possible to? Where do you go? Where do you go from being an opportunist? Because I found it exhausting. Like I've found it very exhausting, always just reacting to whatever comes across my path, and like, okay, where's next month's paycheck coming from? Where is that coming from? Right. And I think that's kind of exhausting. I think at some point,
for you as a treasure hunter, I do know that whether you had a good selling month or not determined on what was available at all the estate sales for a while. Every week, every weekend you'd look for all the estate sales and you'd go hunting. And if the market was good for estate sales, then it would reflect your sales. But if for whatever reason there aren't a whole lot of estate sales going, then everything would start to slow down.
Right, and I think that's the problem. You're kind of not in control of your destiny. I mean, you're sort of in control in that you can strategize. Okay, what am I going to do today? And you can grow an awareness of the environment and what opportunities are open to you. So you start strategizing within the opportunist framework. So you start saying, okay, well, I know that on Thursdays and Fridays there are estate sales. I know on Saturday there are yard sales. I know on Mondays. Like Walgreens goes on sale, or Barnes and Nobles goes on sale. There, I can't talk. Barnes and Noble goes on sale.
The thrift shop has 75% off or something like that. So
you can kind of start strategizing within that framework, but I think you're still kind of trapped. So the question is, where do you go from opportunist? And it's kind of interesting. A lot of this framework is built on relationships with other people, relationships in your environment, but also in self-development. So let me talk about the other end of the scale, and where Rook and Torbert say is like your ultimate level of transcendence. And they say only 1% of people can actually reach this level, which I don't know if that's fair or if that's true. But at the other end of the scale, and we'll talk about the stages in between, the other end of the scale, they have alchemists. And this is what they say about alchemists. They say alchemists are post-conventional. They will often take the role of mentor, guru, leader. They serve the development and growth of themselves and other people. They seek transformation of organizations, not according to any conventional goals or principles, but according to a higher order of behavior and being. They tend to be seen as visionaries, either inspired or deluded. They appear to some people as otherworldly. People may see them as enigmas, abstract, spiritual, or even crazy. They attract others or intimidate them. This is kind of a really interesting. This is like the absolute opposite end of an opportunist, and this is what I kind of like. They have a transforming ability to draw together opposites and initiate new directions. They use creativity, creative tension, and can draw from that to transform people and places and organizations to places they never knew they could go, which is kind of cool. And they will have multiple and diverse responsibilities that spread in many directions, like your family, your organization, world peace. Basically, this is how you go from being a picker to being Nelson Mandela. Sounds legit. So that's a big jump. That's a really big jump. And what I will say is these guys saw they actually had 3 bottom rungs of the ladder. And those were opportunist, diplomat, and expert. And these 3 types of people, they said, or these 3, I shouldn't say types of people, because it's more the logic and the actions that those people use are actually lead to the weakest performance. So these people aren't making much money. They're not necessarily happy. They're not performing to the best of their ability. And I think, and this is, you asked me something before, Isaac. You said, how much are we leaders as, what was the question you asked? You asked, as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, right. Wait, Catherine was asking, we were talking about this, and I said, well, if you're selling on Amazon, the majority of people in our community, our Facebook communities, they sell on Amazon. Does selling on Amazon make you a leader? Are you a leader, the fact that you sell on Amazon? Or are you just following a trend? Are you just following a business model someone told you to do?
And that's a really valid question, because this is a framework designed for leaders and for managers. And I think, my interpretation of this is that we are all we're leading our business. So we're leading ourselves, we're leading our business. And I think within this framework, I think while a lot of it is very corporate in how it talks and how it applies definitions, I think we can apply this to our work as entrepreneurs, because I think to take our business to another stage, we kind of have to be leaders. We can't just be like, okay, I'm like, if you love going to yard sales, if going to yard sales every week makes you super happy, and I love yard sales, they're fun. But I kind of want to do other things too. And I think we're all on a path somewhere, whatever that path is. And it could be anything. Like this doesn't have to be like super higher level thinking. But most of us have some goals. We have some types of goals, whether it's, okay, I want to get a nicer fridge, or I want to get a nicer car, or I want my children to go to a nice school and I want to stay at home with my children. Like it can be on any level. I want to work on my relationship with my partner. There's a lot of goals here. I want to travel. I want to grow. I want to start a new business. I want to grow my business to another step. And I see a lot of people say, okay, I feel stuck in my business. I feel really stuck. I don't know how to get to the next level. And I think it's kind of obvious, but to get to the next level, there has to be changes. You can't keep doing the same things. And and I've got a great quote. I have a lovely quote. It's from Nietzsche. I always have a hard time saying Nietzsche. And he said, to keep the world from closing in on you, you must do one thing every day that is uncomfortable, dislikable, or unnerving. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star.
Ooh, that's pretty deep.
That's pretty deep. So I kind of like this word chaos, and I like doing something that's uncomfortable. And I think this is interesting. I think the problem is a lot of people say, I want to get to the next level. I want to get to the next level. I want to do something new. And they don't make any action towards it. And I'm reading Charlene. She says, I think there are a lot of followers with their Amazon business. Some survive solely on paid lists and bolos. And that's fine. I mean, it's a job. That's kind of where you're at. That's like a job. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with being a follower and seeing it as part of your day-to-day business to make money like that. And it's fine. But this is kind of, and I don't want to get hippie, but I think this is like a holistic thing.
Too late.
No, it's not hippie, like holistic. Think holistic. And I feel that people turn off when you say holistic, but holistic means looking at the big picture, looking at your relationships, looking at yourself. Like, are you happy in your fitness, your mental fitness, your spiritual journey? And I'm not a religious person, but I like I like working my brain and seeing trying to make connections in the world, if that makes sense. Hi, Lauren, welcome to Blab.
Hi, Lauren.
We love Lauren. She's an awesome lady. Hi, JP Freeman. Wow, there's lots of cool people here. We've got more and more people coming in. So what was I talking about? Holistic and hippie. And there's a framework, constructivism, where you kind of see life as a giant jigsaw puzzle, and everything you do is like part of the puzzle. So what you do is you're constantly building this framework in your head, and everything you learn, you fit into that framework. And if it doesn't fit into that framework, you have to look at why. Do you need to adjust your framework? Is there something that needs to bend to fit this new piece of the puzzle in? And I love that kind of image of life. Like that's where I am with life. I'm always like, okay, I just learned this new thing. How does this fit into what I already know? And I think with this concept of evolving through the transformations, I think you're kind of building to your mental jigsaw puzzle.
I can see that.
Is everyone still with me here? I feel like I'm talking a lot here. I guess that's what I'm here for.
Well, one thing I would like to add is, I mean, when you were talking about all your goals, the majority of goals that you just kind of threw out there, improv was all financial related. And then you threw a couple of relationship. And then even, a couple you want to travel. But again, traveling, some people might say that involves financial. You need some type of, finances in order to travel. And so the only thing I would add is that I do know that we're very emotional creatures. A lot of us are driven by emotions. And so I think part of what you're saying is that you kind of have to have a bigger picture, a bigger plan, and something to feed your emotion, because that emotion is going to give you the energy to kind of step up either your job, your career, whatever you want to pursue in life. It's going to give you the energy to kind of run a bit further.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like I try and avoid the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit is money. Like, how do you make money fast? And it's like, that's kind of an easy sell. That's why I don't really post like pictures. I mean, I have a good day on Amazon. I'm like, oh, I want to post my figures. And I don't do it because I think it's low-hanging fruit. You post your figures and say, you can make as much money as me. And I don't like doing that because I think
especially during Q4.
Right. And I think it's cheesy to do that because everyone's different and everyone has their own. What I would rather do is talk about methods of working and like your kind of thought process. Like, I would rather talk about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, than say, okay, this is my results. I don't like jumping into results like that. So Lauren says she's at a starting over place with Amazon, changing directions and finding inspiration here. Awesome. Yay. Awesome. And someone said before, they said, I left my job. Congratulations, Charlene. Left my job. I love treasure hunting. I love Amazon. Love to learn and move to the next level of private white label. So yeah, we're kind of working on an evolution of white label, but I want to go much further than just, okay, this is how you put together a product. Because I think where a lot of people have a sticking point is creative thinking and creativity. And this is something I really want to start working with people on unlocking, because I get a lot of people are like, okay, how do you think like that? How do you get your brain to go in all these directions? And I think there are definite methods. Like, it's learned. I don't think I just came into the world. Like, you learn how to creative think, and it's work to kind of come up with those things. But here's why it appeals to me, because there's all this thing about, okay, you've got to get uncomfortable. You've got to let a little bit of chaos in. And I think this is where you see changes, is when you allow yourself to do something that's silly or crazy or out there. I think the problem is that, and this is where we come into this sort of concept of followers and leaders. Followers are just always listening out for the next thing. Okay, great. It's a BOLO list. It's a list of what I need to go and buy. And I think you're stuck if you are in that path. It's fine to say, okay, this is a compartment of my life. And this compartment is about, okay, I'm going to buy these products and make this money, and I'm going to use this to do other things. Okay, that works. but it's not, you need something outside of that. Okay, how does this fit into the big picture? I'm making this much money off these BOLO lists. What's the next step? Where do I go from here? And the problem is they will only take you so far. So you kind of need something outside of that to say, okay, what's my overall strategy? And I didn't sort of continue with this these frameworks, but it's kind of interesting because there's three basic bottom rungs to the framework, and those are the opportunist, the expert, and the diplomat. And they're kind of interesting. The opportunist is where I think a lot of we are as treasure hunters. Just okay.
Hey, I want to make some money. Come on.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's like, oh, good, a BOLO list, great, an opportunity, boom. And an expert. Now, an expert's kind of interesting. That's someone who's like, I know how to make money. I'm doing this. This is good. But they don't have this ability to collaborate. They don't have. They don't value emotional intelligence. And they don't value other people, which is kind of a problem. And then the other bottom rung, there's 7 of these sort of rungs. And the other one is the diplomat. And a diplomat's super good with people, super nice, super friendly to everyone. But they are so scared of conflict that they don't make any changes. So it's almost like the expert needs to challenge their emotions. Okay, you need to kind of open up to other people and have some emotional awareness. And the diplomat kind of needs to, and it was interesting. One of the things I was reading, they used Pixar as an example. And they said, at Pixar, there aren't any diplomats. It's all about storming. They have a meeting, and if someone's got an idea, they will fight for their idea, and they will kind of argue it out and come out of it okay, we have a solution. And it was kind of an interesting sort of being a diplomat wouldn't work in that environment. So these are the 3 archetypes that were determined to have poor performance. When they studied these people in a business environment, they found that their performance was very weak. That was the opportunist, the expert, the diplomat. The next step up,
because those sound kind of like a positive thing. Like being diplomatic sounds like a good thing to do in the workforce. Opportunists, you're going to look for ways to bring money into the workforce. It's interesting that they look at these as low performance.
Right, but the problem is that they don't bring the 3 skills together. And you can look at this as them being skills. Like seizing opportunities is definitely a skill. Being aware and being grabbing opportunities when you see them is obviously a skill. Being an expert and mastering something and knowing it really well and not being afraid to tell other people about it is also a skill. Being a diplomat and being able to listen to other people and being able to connect and emotionally empathize with other people, also a skill. But on their own, they kind of suck. And I feel like we all know someone who I can look at these and be like, oh, that's the primary action logic for this person. That's the primary action logic. And what you need to do is kind of be aware of where you're missing something, and you can start pulling these 3 together. And when you pull those 3 together, you hit the next level, which is where you start performing. And this level is the achiever. So this is all, we're using a framework. For anyone who's just joined us, this is a framework put together by Rook and Talbot, and it was in the Harvard Business Review. I've posted a link a couple of times with much more information about the 7 archetypes or action logics we're talking about. So the next level, then you reach achiever level. And achiever level is cool. Then you have goals and you start reaching your goals. And I think this is good. I think when you're in sort of using the BOLO lists and you're making money, you're kind of moving into achiever status, because you've okay, I've got my goals. My goal is to make 50,000 a year. Great. I know how I'm going to make that 50,000. Where Diane says she lost us. Do you mean you lost me on a technical level, like my camera and sound are gone, or do you mean you lost me conceptually? Because I can explain better if I'll post the link again. We're using this framework of different people, different leaders, and how you can evolve as a leader. And this was taken from a corporate environment. And this is basically how effective different types of action logics are in a business environment. So we're kind of looking at these action logics. I don't think you can say that. An action logic archetype. And how we can apply this as an entrepreneur to look at ourselves and grow our skills and evolve through these archetypes, which I think is kind of a cool concept. So, okay, we move into the achiever, and that's where you start meeting your goals, which is a good thing. You want to have goals, you want to meet your goals. Isaac, have you got any thoughts? You wanted to talk about, you were talking about needs, and we talked, well, what was it called? You had the 7...
Oh yeah, well, the dimensions of wellness.
Right,
and so there's a lot of variations of the dimensions of wellness. You can Google this. It's called the dimensions of wellness. Some of them have 5, some of them have 8. And the idea is that there's different areas in your life. I'll just go over a few of them. Physical, emotional, environmental, intellectual, occupational, social, spiritual, and financial. So you have all these areas of your life. And the idea is, how well are you performing in all of them? You might excel, for example, you might excel in financial, occupational. However, your emotional and your physical health might be going down. And so your idea is you want to be continually growing and improving all of those areas so that you have a sense of balance, of a balance and an overall wellness within yourself.
Cool. Sorry, I'm listening to you. I was finding an image that I think is kind of helpful for people. You know, it was funny when you told me about that. I got thinking about, I did a coffee with Catherine like a year ago. And I talked about how I feel like a sim sometimes. And especially with children, like you have children to manage, a house to manage. And you kind of need to like manage all your bars. You need to make sure you've eaten enough, you've got enough sleep, you're healthy, you're seeing the doctor, you're getting whatever you need taken care of, you're going to the gym. But you also need to make sure that your kids are doing okay, that you're managing them. You need to make sure that you're managing the house, that everything's kind of okay around you. And then, and I like the kind of the Maslow pyramid, where like Maslow's thing is at the bottom, and I think they're like repackaging of the same thing. Maslow had a pyramid, and he said, first of all, you need to meet your physiological needs. So you need to make sure that you have a roof over your head, you're breathing, you're eating, you're sleeping. And then he had the next level was safety. So you need to make sure you have security. You're not taking crazy risks. You've got all your basic things like taxes and like everything kind of in its place so that you're in a secure place. And then, I'm sorry, I said the T word. And then you kind of move up into a point where you can start being more focused on relationships, learning, and self-actualization. And self-actualization is like your drives, your ambitions, your goals, and things you do for yourself. So you kind of need to work your way up through this pyramid, or you can use the dimensions of wellness is kind of the same thing. You're just basically making sure all your bars are in place to have this kind of holistic.
And I think also, like, the other thing I'd like to add, I mean, when I was studying Kung Fu, one of the things we've learned was that life is continually in motion. And so life, you're always moving in life. And so you either moving in a positive direction or a negative direction. And so the idea is like the dimensions of wellness, I guess it can also apply to Maslow, is that you look at these various areas and you want to make sure that you're continually growing. You're never going to reach a limit because, you know, everything's it's in constant motion. It's not like, yes, I've achieved this point. I've achieved the max this, the max that. You can't really max out. It's just, you just want to make sure you're continually growing in these areas and to be aware if you're lacking and shrinking, going backwards in any of areas, and then to address that.
That's a really good point. So we're kind of looking at this as a fluid thing and a forward, like you're just always trying to make sure you're in forward motion. And I think this is perhaps the thing, if we go back to the framework of the 7 leaders, it's kind of interesting because they talk about how you sometimes need to revisit your old skills. And we talked about how diplomat, expert, opportunist, these are actually skills that you can go back and use. Like, for example, if you're in a hostage situation, drawing on your diplomat skills might actually save your life. So you do kind of need to go back and be able to draw on those skills. So we'll carry on working up the list of 7 transformations. So we had the diplomat, expert, opportunist, and then you move into being an achiever. Once you can kind of draw all those skills together, you start achieving, you start meeting your goals, you become focused on what do I have to do, what needs to be done. And I think that's the point where you're ticking all those boxes off of Maslow's pyramid. You've got your sim bars kind of full up.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm healthy, I'm okay, I'm working on my goals, and all these things are happening. And that's great. And a lot of people stay there, and that is absolutely fine. But these guys basically, they have 3 levels above that. So we've got the bottom 4 levels, and a lot of people don't want to proceed beyond that level. They're fine. They're doing okay. But here's what they talk about. They present 2 more levels to this: the individualist and the strategist. So I'm going to talk first about the individualist, and I kind of like the individualist. This kind of speaks to me. But this is where you stop being so goal oriented, and you start getting kind of selfish. You're like, well, I want to be a rock star. I'm going to make this happen. How do I be a rock star? And your goals become more like just a part of the puzzle. And this is kind of what we were talking about. Okay, if you buy everything based on lists, or you buy, like, you follow formulas, that's great. But that's just this tiny fraction of the puzzle that makes up you. What are you? Who are you? What are you going to do? And I think you're kind of unfulfilled. I don't want to die. I don't want to die one day and go, oh, well, I spent my life chasing bolos. Like, it's great, it'll make you money. And you're like, yay, I didn't die poor and broke. But it's like, yeah, you know what I'm kind of saying here? It's like, what's your like higher purpose here?
Bolo list.
That's probably going to happen to me. I'm going to like die in a car in TJ Maxx, you know. If I could just get that last bottle of bath bubbles. Like, no. So this is like, okay, that's fine. The goal thing, achieving your goals, is awesome. But how does this fit into you as an individual? And at the individual level, it's kind of interesting. You start looking at your relationships and how you fit in on the higher level. And I think people who are kind of, some people are more driven to be leaders than others. Like some people want to in their church or in their, I don't know, the town council or politics. Some people are very driven to participate and find their role. But I think you can find a role anywhere, like in your family, and I think you might want to develop and evolve your role, not necessarily as a leader, but within whatever it is you do, within whatever networks and systems you were part of. I think you might want to look at how you can become more effective within that system or that group.
I can see that.
So am I losing people? I kind of want to keep people on board, so I'm always worried. I'm trying to stay kind of practical with this. So okay,
well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Where does passion and obsession come into play?
I think that fits very much into the individual action, because then you start becoming very focused about what really drives you, and you become very aware of your own imprint on the world. Now, Kim said a really cool thing to me the other day on Facebook, and I was talking about Facebook, and I said, what did I say? I said I find Facebook a little bit stressful sometimes. I find a lot of posts on Facebook kind of make me go, oh, I don't want to hear this. And sometimes I kind of doubt I think it's good to have some doubt, honestly, and be like, okay, am I doing the right thing here? Am I helping people? Or am I just being an ego monster? And I kind of have this fear. I don't want to become an ego monster. I want to help people and be like, and do good things and leave a positive imprint. And she said a really cool thing. She said, we're bound to touch people in our lives. And she compared it to a ship. She said we sail through life's journey, we can't be certain where our wake, who is touched by our wake and how. And I think this is kind of, I love that image. I love that image of like, I'm sailing through life and you're all like being touched by my wake, and hopefully it's full of sparkly, positive unicorns and happy things. And that I love that image. But I think that fits really well into this sort of individualist framework, which is where you become more self-aware and you start kind of looking at what you touch, what you leave in your path, what your legacy is.
You know, a great book that reminds me of, and is, you know, it might have a more relation than I'm giving credit for, is The Alchemist, Pablo Coelho. And you know, the big thing I got out of everything, you read the book, is that everyone has their own individual journey, their own legend to fulfill, and everyone's on their own journey, and that you have to find your own journey. You can look at other people, but really you have your own personal legend that you need to fulfill, and you need to figure out what that is and then do it.
I think that's so true. And I think especially, and I think this might be something especially for women in the group. I feel like as mothers particularly, we can get really sucked into like what our children are doing, and making everyone else happy, that we kind of overlook what drives us. And I think like it's a balance. You don't want to get too sucked into like, okay, well, I'm going to my macrame class every night for 7 nights. Make your own dinner, kids. But I think you become a much more powerful and positive influence if you kind of put your own oxygen mask on before you take care of others. I think you want to be you want to take care of yourself and your own needs. And I kind of know this, like when I get frustrated, like, oh, I'm not doing things that I need to do. I feel I'm not as good an influence on my children and the community as when I'm feeling happy and positive and like, okay, I'm enjoying what I'm doing in life at the moment. I think you have to, and I think this is huge. You need to enjoy what you're doing. And I don't know, I've got to points where I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this particular thing anymore. I'm not going to, like coaching I like coaching on some level, but also it kind of, I get kind of anxious when I'm like, okay, I've got a coaching thing to do now. And I feel like I'm better focusing on what I really enjoy and what I love doing these shows. I really enjoy this format and talking like this. So I like doing things I enjoy, and I'm always trying to move. Like, I know I could make a course about just sell on Amazon. Here's how you sell on Amazon. Step 1, step 2, step 3. But I think I would get bored, like making that. And I don't think I would have the excitement as when I'm like, okay, I've got something else I want to try and work on and be passionate about. And so I'm going to make this course that has more of a focus on creativity and growing it. And I think it will be a better course because it's something that I'm really driven to do. And I feel is part of me and is kind of unique to me, as opposed to just, and it's hard. It's like, I don't know. I think there's a thing where art is what you want to do and what you want to put out there, and business is doing things for other people. And I think if you're like, I think alchemy is really when you can start merging those things, and finding things that please you and make you happy and excited. And you're like, yay, I woke up this morning. I'm happy. Let's face the day. Woohoo. It's going to be a good day. And
attitudes,
people want to hear it.
Yeah, I was going to say attitudes, emotions, energy, enthusiasm, your obsession, they're all influential. You're going to influence other people. And the stronger emotion you have inside, the more influence you're probably going to have on the people around you.
It's very contagious. And I like, this is something you learn in like performing or writing or any kind of creativity, especially when it's very personal. The stronger your point of view, the more you're going to engage other people, the more you're going to bring other people into it. And they're going to buy, like, if you're super enthusiastic and excited about something and you truly believe in it, other people are going to want to jump right in with you. And like, that's kind of why I resist the get rich quick. Like, people are like, why don't you set up a blog and just buy some content and put affiliate links on? And I'm like, Okay, but that's like a strategy, and that's okay. That's like, that could meet your goals, but it doesn't drive me, and it doesn't make me feel like I'm on life's journey. It doesn't make me feel like I'm moving to kind of a new place. It feels kind of stagnant doing something like that. So, okay, we talked about individualist. Okay, the other, so we're doing well. We've got past, so the three bottom performers we had were diplomat, expert, opportunist. Then we had the achievers, who have kind of mastered it and who are meeting their goals. They're performing, they're doing okay, they're making money, they've got their house taken care of, they're kind of in order. And then we had the individualist. And alongside the individualist, you have the strategist. Now, the strategist is kind of clever. That's when you start making links between everything. So the individualist is kind of focused on themselves, their own goals. The strategist becomes more focused on the win-win. And actually, this is where most people will probably, like, if they work super hard at evolving and self-evolution, the strategist is probably the highest level you will, well, I won't say that. According to this framework, only 1% of people reach Alchemist. But strategist is a very high performer. Strategist is doing very, very well in life. So you have the individualist and the strategist. And the strategist becomes interested not just in rules. They start looking for win-win situations. If they see a conflict, they find a way to reframe that conflict. And it's like, there are some conflicts where you're like, I just can't see a way to fix this conflict. Like if you have two opposing views and they're really like entrenched in their views, most of us get to a point where we're like, I don't know how to fix this conflict. I don't know how to resolve this. And I think the majority of people, when they're in that situation, will either get in an argument and say, I'm right, you're wrong, or they'll walk away. And those are kind of the usual responses. And I think a strategist might find a way to reframe the problem. Isn't there like a Star Trek thing? Does anyone? It's the Kobayashi Maru. I feel okay. No, there's like a Star Trek thing, and I don't even watch Star Trek, but this is like one of those things that I like. Captain Kirk, right? He has like this test, and he goes into this simulator, and I'm sure someone's going to correct me on this and say that's not how it was, but he goes into like some simulator. And there's like a ship and it's stranded. And it's like, you can rescue the ship, but you're going to die because there's like, I don't know, a force field or something, or they're aliens and they're going to do something. Or you can just go away and let it burn. And he basically comes out of the simulator and reprograms it and hacks it, and goes back in. And then he's like, ha ha ha, I saved the Kobayashi Maru and I didn't die. I'm a winner. Because he kind of hacked it. And so some might say he cheated. But we'll put that aside.
That is cheating.
Right, but we'll put that aside. And we'll say, okay, he reframed the problem. He found a solution that involved like stepping outside of the simulator and reprogramming it so that he could win. Because he looked at the bigger picture. And I think that's the problem. When you're entrenched in an argument or a debate, you tend to not see the bigger picture. Like, how important is this? How relevant is it? And what outcomes do we actually want? And like I think it was a training thing. He had to like pass the test to get into the academy or something. And he realized it was a no-win situation. So he went out of it and made it a win-win situation so he could get into this academy. And he looked at the big picture, the big outcome, which is how, what do I actually want to get out of this? The simulation doesn't really matter. These aren't real people. This isn't a real thing. Instead, we need to get outside of it and look at what outcomes we want. And that, I don't know, that's kind of where you're at as a strategist. You're able to have perspective on different things that are going on, and look at them from an outside perspective and how they fit. And going back to this idea of like constructivism and your jigsaw puzzle of life, like how you make your money or any particular argument or conflict you're having on any one day is just like a piece in the puzzle of life. And what you really need to be looking at is this big picture and how that little argument fits into your big picture. So can you find a way of reframing it or fixing it or changing the outcome so that it actually works within your framework? And I think this is where the strategist comes in. They can solve those problems. They can put them in perspective, and they can see the links. Like Captain Kirk wanted to get into the academy. And most people would get so caught up in the problem. They'd be like, how do I solve this problem? How do I solve this problem? Not, why do I need to solve this problem? And I think by coming outside of it and looking at it from the outside and how it's relevant to the rest of your life, that's when you can really start achieving. So that's kind of where the strategist is. So those are like the penultimate rungs. The individualist, who's kind of on this journey of self enhancement, self growth, and the strategist. And these are two very powerful, effective leaders. The person who's on a journey of self growth is going to be kind of an inspiration to other people. They're going to be developing themselves to a very high level. And the strategist is going to be creating big changes in the organizations they're part of, the systems they're part of, the groups they're part of. And these are kind of the penultimate levels. Sorry, I needed to breathe. I feel like I just went on like
I got questions, okay. But I think we need to move on to the next one, and then I'll start.
Well, the last step is the alchemist. So if you have questions before we talk about the alchemist, you can. I'm going to drink water. So if you have a question, you can ask your question.
Yes, these are very exciting things. Like I listen to these things, and I'm like, yes, I want to be all these things.
You want to be all the things.
Right, and it starts feeding into your ego. You know, your ego is like, yes, I want to move on to the next level. And so, you know, it's great we understand the definitions of them. We acknowledge their existence. But like, from a more practical sense, what can you do to get there? I mean, what do you need to do to get there? If it is even possible for you to do that?
Okay, and that's a really good question. And I actually posted links a couple of times to some discussions of these this framework. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through it. I was trying to look for it, and it's kind of interesting actually that they have some suggestions. They have a sample report that they actually ran. Now I'm a little bit. These guys are marketers, basically. They are marketers on some level. They are like, they've written for Harvard. They're professors. They're business. They're also marketers. You can get a report done. There's basically a glorified BuzzFeed quiz that you fill in, sure. You send to them, and they will tell you where you currently are at and what you need to do to get to the next level. And that costs £500 for the basic
£500
consultation. It's a bargain. Well then dollars, that's like $700-800. Yeah. So I mean, I will say that these guys are marketers, and I'm not promoting them. I know nothing. I haven't taken the test. I just think it's a really interesting framework, and it's an interesting way to get perspective on your journey of self-development and where you could go to. So with that in mind, I've posted a couple of them. The leadership development profile. They actually take a sample response. And this guy they determined was a late stage strategist. And he needs to move to being an alchemist. So let's first talk about what an alchemist, what is it about being an alchemist? And we this is kind of where we started. We started talking about what an alchemist does. And what we said was an alchemist tends to be a mentor or guru. They're a leader. They sometimes come across as a bit otherworldly, or either super inspirational and they're always pretty charismatic, or they can kind of come across as a bit deluded. They have expertise in they're kind of like artists in that they can find a way of not just reframing situations, but also giving people very strong mental images, suggestions, guidance. They tend to attract other people and really inspire people. And they make big changes. Basically, an alchemist ends up making very big transformations and changes in the world. And these are kind of the people that you want as world leaders. They're the people that they're going to solve big scale problems. They can turn a hopeless situation. I'm reading this. They can often turn around a hopeless situation by the strength of their insight and personal courage. So this is kind of like, this is like the pinnacle of existence, perhaps. And it may not be a real thing. Like, there may not actually be anyone that is in this position. Like, I'm sure you can think of like characters in movies and things who have, like, I don't know, Obi-Wan. I don't even watch Star Wars. Is he like a kind of like big guru figure? Like, this is kind of like a mythical
probably
guru
Yoda.
figure.
I would think Yoda would be the big guru.
Yoda, there you go.
Yeah.
So this is how you become Yoda. And they use other people. They talked about Ernest Shackleton, who traveled across the Atlantic. They talked about like Nelson Mandela is another person. I think anyone who really goes out their way to do something kind of amazing and groundbreaking. And I mean, I think that's a big jump for a start. Like, we talked about people being stuck between being followers and leaders. And I was trying not to read the thing at the side, and I just thought this might be a good jump to take. Be an alchemist, Isaac. Turn my water into wine. Yeah, no, it's usually my coffee into wine. It's like that. That's what type of day is it? Okay, it's before 5 p.m. Coffee. All right, it's wine o'clock. Okay, let's go. Okay,
yeah,
I was on the thing. Okay, so we were talking about alchemists, and I was sort of talking about what
do you say? I mean, a typical, going back to a more realistic person, I would think more like a civil rights leader, say, such as Martin Luther King. Or maybe even going into like Gandhi, maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing these like big names out there.
No, and that's kind of it. I mean, again, this is like a construct. This isn't necessarily a real thing. This is like it's like a set of ideals, perhaps. And I mean, the problem is, as soon as you start using real people, it's easy to say, oh, well, this guy actually did this bad thing, so he can't be transformational, and that critique. But it's more defining the behavior of that person than defining the holistic person. So I guess it's kind of more the logic that determines your actions. So this is about how you have the alchemist action logic. What is the logic that determines your actions when you are an alchemist? And it's kind of interesting because if you look at the link, there's actually these suggestions for this guy who is a strategist and how he can develop towards being an alchemist. And these are practical suggestions. So one thing is find support and avenues to express the struggle of your journey. So that's kind of interesting. That's like acknowledge that your journey is like a struggle. It's not like you don't just glide in on this Zen, like, here I am, I'm Buddha. That's not quite how you get there. Like, it is going to be a struggle.
Like tweeting
it's hard
my first
work.
world problems, would that work?
Tweeting your problem might help. Well,
my first world problems.
Maybe not your first world problems, but I think expressing truth. And this is something huge. And this kind of comes from the individualist perspective, but expressing your self and being truthful can be a really scary thing. Like actually telling the truth about how you're feeling. And like if I come in and say, guys, I'm kind of scared. Like I'm worried about something. I'm nervous about something. That's like a really vulnerable thing, but also that like people will listen to you if you're truthful and I think this is what's missing in a lot of blogs, marketing. Like I kind of miss the days of LiveJournal when people talked about what was really affecting them.
Well, see, that's funny because you don't think of, I mean, as a leader, you would think being that truthful and honest, not only vulnerability, a sense of weakness on your part, a sense of, okay, you don't know how to strategize. You don't know how to turn a bad solution into a good, into something good. And so it's kind of interesting that saying that you need to express these struggles and these challenges.
Yeah, I think there are ways and ways of doing it. Like, I think weakness is when you go on Facebook and you just go, oh, my life sucks. I hate my life. I'm really depressed. This thing happened and this thing happened. Oh, why do all these bad things happen to me? Whereas I think if you can be truthful and you can be like honest about things that are happening in your life, but without kind of going the complaint route, by actually, okay, I'm working on a solution to this. This is what I'm doing. This is I think that can actually be very powerful, because I don't think we should judge one another by, well, I don't think we should judge one another anyway. But I don't think this is about like material things. Like, this is why I say this isn't about figures or money or like, hey, I did this much in sales. This is more about, where are your thought processes right now? Where's your mindset at? Where are you moving? What's your flow? What's your direction? And I think that's something that's really, really useful and important and helpful to other people. But I think being authentic is crucial. And I see a very significant, I think it's very, very important to be authentic. When people aren't authentic, we kind of know. You kind of sense it. You're like, okay, this guy's just promoting this thing, or they're just selling this to me, or whatever.
Wait for it, the sales pitch. Wait for it.
Right, and yeah, that's. Yeah, I think authenticity is like a big key here. And I think it's interesting, they say find ways to express your struggles. So and this is going back to like the alchemy idea. The Neil Armstrong stepping out and saying, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That's like an alchemy moment, because everyone knows that saying. Everyone has the mental image of Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon. Like, if he just like stepped out and went, oof, well, I don't know what I'm doing, what's going on? And they didn't record it, and they didn't, like, it was like a dramatic big moment. I don't like it. Take me home. Like, and I think the alchemist has a conscious control over how they're expressing it and what they're expressing it. So they are aware, and I think this is kind of my answer to your point. Now I've thought about it a bit. And you said, is it weakness? Is it sort of, because it can be uninspiring. It can be kind of disheartening if someone complains a lot or says, oh, I'm really scared. But if you can express that in a way, like if you're aware of the impact of your words on other people, you can actually frame what you're doing in a way that's both truthful to yourself, but that also has resonance with other people. And I think that's a really exciting like stage to reach. And I know, like, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I want to touch. That's really interesting. You said Neil Armstrong. This week, we partially homeschool Catherine's youngest son, Sid. And this week, we did a project where we did a biography on Neil Armstrong. And so I got to brush up on who Neil Armstrong is as a person. And one of the things I found fascinating was that his personal life story is really interesting. As a child, he loved to fly. He wanted to fly. He was fascinated by technology, and he actually got his pilot's license at a really young age to fly. And so you get this like young kid that just wants to fly and be up in the sky. Who would have ever thought that following that passion would have led him to being the first man on the moon? I mean, how far can you have gone? If you would have told this 6-year-old kid one day you're going to land on the moon, it would have blown his mind away, because he achieved something that wasn't even imaginable back then. And then when he did reach that level, he had this profound statement to say to the world, which was awesome.
That's kind of it. And I think this is it. It's like a journey. I mean, we're all, and it kind of goes back to what Kim said to me about we're all on a ship sailing through life's journey. And I think it's important not to say, okay, like I fit into this box and this is where I am for my whole life. Or, okay, I have to become like this amazing world leader and solve world peace. Like, not everyone wants to do that. Not like, we're all evolving on our own timeline, in our own setting, with our own friends and family and people surrounding us. And we're sort of going to evolve within that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very much a journey. And so kind of what I wanted to do with this was just to talk about that journey. And I mean, this is coming from a business perspective. This is coming from some guys that actually studied people in business environments, and they said these are the people that are performing well and being very successful. They're being promoted. They're making money for the company. They're taking the company in new directions. And it's kind of that travel from being. It's like, okay, this is what people who are basically keeping the company going and basically meeting their goals, as opposed to like, okay, this is what people who are visionaries are doing. This is what the people who are really making big changes. I mean, like Steve Jobs, I think he was a visionary. He had like big ideas, and he pissed people off. He did things that were really obnoxious. I mean, you can't hold him up and say, oh, he was a perfect person. But he used like bravery, and he could kind of get outside of himself. And I think this is something really, really huge, which is being able to like take a chance to go outside of yourself a bit. And I wanted to talk about one thing really quickly, which is risk. And I think risk is a really, really interesting concept within this opportunist to alchemist framework. Like the opportunist takes risks, but they're not managed risks. They're like crazy risks. They're like, okay, well, if I don't pay my taxes for 3 years, and if I buy some knockoff Chanel perfume and I sell it, that's like, it's just unmanaged risk. You might make money very quickly. You might sort of have that opportunity. And I see this a lot online. It's like, well, I'm making money doing this. I'm just going to sell all these T-shirts that are just basically copies of other T-shirts. And it's like, okay, that's an unmanaged risk. And you might make some money in the very short term, but you're going to burn so many bridges through this risk. You might lose your account. You might get into like legal trouble. You might, like, all these bad things could happen because of that unmanaged risk. Now, the alchemist or the strategist even takes risks, but they're managed risks. They look at the risk in the concept of the environment around them, and they work on what they can do to mitigate those risks, what they can do to manage those risks and control them. And by having an awareness of your environment, your goals, your plans, you can actually manage your risks within that. And I think that's like, they don't really address that so much in this framework. But if I was kind of writing this framework, I would probably have risk going throughout as a kind of string throughout this. And I would look at how these people manage their risk. Because they talk about like your action logic as a response to a threat. I think that the risk is kind of the opposite end of that. There's your response to your threat, and there's how you plan for a threat. And the kind of threats you are inviting into your life. Like, I think the opportunist end of things, you are going in with very unmanaged risk. The diplomat kind of tries to avoid any risk. Yeah. But then the strategist, the individualist, the alchemist, they're very aware of risk, but they work within that risk framework, and they do what they can to manage it. Sorry, Isaac, are you still with me?
Oh yeah, I'm with you. Okay. I don't know. I was listening. I don't know. Two things I didn't catch. One of them was, what was the advice they gave to that case study? Because that wasn't real too clear to me. To become an alchemist.
Okay, I'm gonna post the link here. Which has it. There's like a whole page of advice here if you scroll down. Okay. And I just really touched on like one or two of them, and then because there's so much here. But they said, find support and avenues to express the struggle of your journey.
That's right.
Explore it with others of like minds. Mm-hmm. Explore how your way of being interrelates with those around you, and what is the impact of your insights on others. Like, how do you affect other people? Create more space in your life for contemplation, engage in meditative practices, and listen to your inner voice. Be aware of empty mind, learn to live and appreciate the gap in thinking. So look at kind of, that's an interesting one actually, empty mind. So like, be aware that there are things that you don't have the knowledge, you don't, and see where those gaps are. And how you can use those gaps and fill those gaps. be conscious of the constructed nature of things. Test your attachment to your way of knowing, and this kind of fits into the concept of reframing that I talked about.
Yeah, I really like when it says be aware of the constructive, whatever you're doing. And we talk about with our treasure hunting group, we try to stay away from really ranty things and things that are negative, because we try to do things that are positive that's going to help everybody. Which it kind of reminds me of that type of reflection.
And I think, I would add to this, be mindful of what you do. And I think if I took one thing from this, it would be about being mindful that you are being truthful, but how your truth affects other people and how you choose to express and frame your truth. And this is something my background is kind of in performance art, how you perform something, and you can take a truth, you can take something that is very important to you, and you can perform it in many ways. And people tend to think, oh, that's being fake, that's faking something, but it's not. It's expressing it in different ways. So you might express something you're feeling through drawing a picture, or Banksy is going to express something in a very different way than, say, Leonardo da Vinci might have done. They might have the similar trick, but express it in very different ways. And Banksy might express something one way one day, and then the next day he might express it in a very different way. And I think being aware of how, and I kind of this might be a personal thing, but I kind of like this concept of how being an artist is kind of very related to alchemy, that you are finding a way of recognizing truths within yourself and truths that you see in the world around you, and then you're expressing them to others, but you are aware of the impact of how you express them, whether you tell a joke about it. And it's kind of funny, it actually talks about humor, and it says the strategist will use a lot of wit, humor. And you got to look back at old courts, when you had the king and the queen and the jester, and it was the jester was the only guy allowed to tell the truth because he framed it as humor. I think often the jester has a lot to say. So I would look at this as being able to recognize truth, being able to look around you and say, okay, I'm learning this, I see these things happening, and then being able to express them in a way that resonates with people, and it creates change. I think by expressing truth in a way that creates change, you have something very, very powerful. And that's kind of the takeaway really cool. I would probably go with.
Okay.
Cool.
It's a lot.
Whoa, we talked about this crazy big framework.
Yeah, it's a lot of information. I imagine 3 things. What would 3 things, your everyday Amazon seller, they go to stores, they buy cheap stuff in stores, then they go to sell it on Amazon, maybe they're going to sell it on eBay, maybe they're aspiring to get into private label, white label. What are 3 things you think, as an individual, kind of a starting out entrepreneur, what they can do to get, I guess, to improve their logic action?
Okay. I would say, first of all, be kind of aware of what drives you, what you love. And kind of, I think what drives you is really important. Because I think a lot of people will go, if I went shopping in Home Depot, I would probably get very depressed, because I hate Home Depot. I don't like those kind of products. They don't have any resonance with me. I'm not a big fan of those kind of things. And I think being aware of what drives you and what excites you is a great place to start. So for me,
what about the widget?
I like kind of, I think it's fine to sell widgets, but that's a compartment in your strategy.
Okay.
So I would say, if you want to kind of evolve from just having these compartmentalized strategies, and you want to kind of be building more on yourself, I'd say, first of all, look at what drives you and what interests you, and just try and hook into that in some way. If you love jewelry or art, then focus more on that and source in places that appeal to that, or source like try and learn more about that topic. And seriously, the more you learn, like just always be learn about anything, like whatever appeals to you. Wikipedia surf, like Wikipedia surfing is amazing. You can just learn about anything. But always be very open to learning, and never think that like any type of learning is wasted. Like always be learning and growing within yourself with a kind of view on what drives you. And what I would say on a practical level, and I've kind of talked about this before, like I feel there's like a pyramid. When you start out selling, you start generally selling other people's stuff. So that's like stuff you find in stores. You go and you source for other people's stuff, and brands and products, and you sell them on other people's platforms like Amazon or eBay. I think it becomes much more powerful when you find when you create your own stuff to sell, when you start creating your own products and you have control over them, both from a practical point of view, because you cut down your competition and you make and you have more control over your listing. But also in a more spiritual kind of like mindfulness sense, because you're actually working on something that is very fulfilling to you. You're like, hey, I made this. This is cool. This is part of like me. I had the power to do this. So you progress from selling other people's products on other people's platforms to selling your own products on other people's platforms to selling your own products on your own platform. And I think that's kind of like the pyramid of selling. Once you can be selling your own products on your own platform, you're in a very strategically powerful place. But I think it's also more fulfilling to you as a person to do that.
That's really cool. Really, really cool.
And I would go one step further than that. And once you're doing that, if you have your own product selling on your own platform, how can you expand on that? I mean, if you're selling art supplies on your own art website, maybe you can create a community of artists from that. Maybe you can build out and create connections with museums or galleries or coffee shops. Like, I think you can grow from that. I mean, if you make a cat products and you're selling them on your cat website, maybe you can grow from that. Like, how do you grow? And you may grow in ways like you could found the next cat social network. Like, there's always somewhere to go. There's always somewhere to grow. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. There's never like an end of the line. You never, and it's funny because I think there's a piece of advice here that says, never feel like you've just arrived. Like, you've never just arrived. You're always in transition. You're always evolving and moving forward. Cool. We are at 1 hour and 30 minutes.
Ooh,
so I think, hopefully this was fun or interesting.
There's one question we got.
Do you know of any resources? Do you know any resources about mindfulness, Isaac? I feel this is your department.
Gosh,
I think anything Zen, like I don't know. Is there?
I think there's so many directions you can go with it. I guess I'll have to get back. Not at the top of my head. No, I know. I was really into this.
I've forgotten what it's called.
Oh.
There's an Asian book. There's like a Chinese book, and I've forgotten what it's called. I'll think on it, okay. Diana.
No, if we're talking books, for me personally, the one book that helped me out with mindfulness was The Art of Happiness. The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama, which I thought was a great book.
Oh, cool.
And it kind of opened my eyes to, I guess, being more aware to who I am as a person, to my surroundings, and what it means to be happy. And so, and it talked about various types of meditations. I went, several years ago, I found myself in a very low state, and I was listening to any motivational book I could get my hands on, anywhere from Napoleon Hill to, of course, Tony Robbins, to of course a couple of other no-name guys, and it led me down a path of meditation, which meditation / self-hypnosis / neural was it linguist was it neural the neural programming,
linguistic programming.
That's it. Yeah, my brain's not completely on. And so I started meditating. I was meditating 20 minutes a day. I would come home from lunch from work, and I would just meditate. I had a bunch of goals, and I would sit down and just visualize myself, like, what do I need to achieve those goals, and visualize myself what happens after I achieve those goals. And everything I wrote down, I achieved, which at the time was a huge, huge milestone, from weight loss to financial to occupational to educational. And so just spending the time, investing the time, 20 minutes a day to meditate, for me personally, gave me a huge boost in life. Like, I couldn't even tell you how big of a boost it was. It was a huge paradigm shift for me. So that's what I have to say about mindfulness.
I just posted a link to Lao Tzu, and he was the the Tao Te Ching. So someone sent me that anonymously a few years back. It was kind of weird. It just arrived. It was long before I did treasure hunting. It was back when I lived in England, and someone sent it to me anonymously. They sent me that book. They're probably telling me I needed to like chill, be more mellow or something. But it's kind of interesting. I like a good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving. And I know there's like that guy, there's the guy, John Halcyon Stein. He lives in San Diego. His thing is float more, steer less. And that's kind of fun. Like I think there's definite truth in sort of just being aware of what's around you, and just being aware, like taking a moment out and not feeling like you have to do anything, not feeling like you have to move at this stage, just kind of feeling where the flow is and what is going on around you, and being observant of things. And I found this has helped, because I have a tendency to get kind of anxious about things. And I found it really helps to like step outside of all your emotions and all your feelings about it and say, okay, what am I actually anxious about here? What is going on? And you try and look at it as an observer, and take yourself outside of all the emotions. And it's kind of a skill to do that. But I think that's kind of a key for me, is trying to take myself outside of the emotions and the internal feelings in something, and to look at it from a more objective perspective. So that's kind of where I'm at with mindfulness. Cool. We should wrap up. But thank you, everybody who came and watched us and joined in. I hope it made sense. I hope it was useful. I hope there was some positive. I hope we left sparkly unicorns in our wake and touched people in a positive way. We will be uploading this to YouTube, so you can watch back, tell your friends. If you enjoyed this blab, then let us know. Tell us what you'd like to see us do more of. This was kind of a different vibe than, I mean, the last few things we've been doing have been more Q&A about selling online, selling on Amazon. This is kind of a different vibe to what we normally do. So if you liked it, tell us and tell us why. If you didn't like it, tell us and tell us why, and tell us what you'd like us to do. We're always open to things. We're always open to like doing whatever you guys are interested in us talking about, sharing. We will, I don't know what, I just wanted to shout out the bundle cast again. We are doing a bundle cast next week for spring. Yay! For Easter bunnies, Passover, April Fool's, spring break, spring cleaning, any other spring things you can think of. If you're a member of our bundle masterclass, you will be able to see that. If you are not, you can check out catherine.com/bundles for more information. Use the code treasure99 if you're signing up there. But it's a lot of fun. This is our 8th bundle cast. 8th. And we talk about all the ideas for bundles. So we usually generate like hundreds of ideas each bundle cast. So you can watch them all back. If you join the group, you can watch those all back and have fun with them. All right, have a great week, guys. We love you lots. We are so grateful to you for joining us and coming along on this little journey with us. Thank you so much. Love you guys. Bye.